live here just for a minute or two, just so everyone knows.
So
We
we're
should be good, right? Do you see it?
You don't. So upside down is just like this long. Videos. Oh, here it is. When I put videos, it's there. Okay.
Alright, is your volume up?
Alright, have it up, yep.
Testing, testing.
When I see you here, I'll know to look.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this November 15, 2021 Sylvania Board of Education meeting to order. Ms. Shanks, can you call the roll?
Julie Hoffman.
Here.
Ruslan Slutsky.
Here.
Greg Feller.
Here.
Kimberly Conklin.
Here.
Tammy Lavalette.
Here. Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And with that, we are with you, Dr. Monley.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just to give you a little update on the day in the life of a superintendent, I've been quite busy, as all of us are in the field of education these days. Lots going on, but I think it's important for our folks to know here in the room and around the table and out there who may be watching us live. I continue to meet with our building principals individually to learn more about each of them personally and professionally and their needs of the building. I truly have enjoyed these meetings and learning about our administrative team members. Laughed quite a bit in some instances. It's been pretty interesting. I also want our folks to know, not only on behalf of myself, but our board members, each month I take an opportunity to meet with each of our board members individually. The purpose of that is to make sure that I am on par with their expectations and goals and objectives for the district, and also share in the conversation things that are going on in the district that they should be aware of, and that means certain projects and notifications and just keeping that two-way open dialogue. So our board members are kind enough to give us some of their time, some of my time, or they give me their time in order that we can make sure that we have all oars rowing in the same direction. This week, we will also reach out to our community members who volunteered to conduct strategic plan meetings, more specifically those small focus group meetings, kind of coffee talks, if you will. We also look forward to conducting some internal stakeholder focus group meetings here in the near future. Also, after our board meeting this evening, I will be participating along with other area superintendents in a conversation with Lourdes University about how we can continue to work together to diversify the educator workforce. I'll be participating in a panel, so it's a regional activity, so I'm very honored that they would ask to have my voice at the table as we represent Sylvania schools. I'm also looking forward to attending the Northview performance of My Fair Lady this week. It'll be great, as well as I will attend the Focus Show art event at the University of Toledo on Friday, where we will have some student artwork on display. And on a final note, I just want to remind everyone in the room and those that may be tuning in live or next day, just want to let everyone know that we will be returning to a little more slice of our typical format for our board meetings. Starting with our January organizational meeting, we hope to no longer live stream our board meetings, but return to our traditional practice of recording our board meetings and then posting them to our district website. That's my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Okay, then it looks like we have a presentation.
We do. We have our gate coordinator, Barbie Shepard, here this evening, this afternoon, whichever you prefer. I don't ever know, but it's dark outside early, so it could go either way. Barbie's here to give us an overview regarding our gifted services in Sylvania schools, just to give everyone an update with where we are and shoring up our services for our students who happen to be academically talented. So Barbie, thank you for being here this evening.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to share what's going on in our gifted program, kind of where we are and where we're looking to go in the future.
I can stand over here. You want me to do it? Just like tell me when you hit the button.
Thank you. Okay, so before we look at what our gifted service is going to look like in our district, we need to look at the why. So the big picture and the overall resounding factor is our students. We have students who need that educational advancement, and as educators and as human beings, it's our responsibility to help meet those students' needs. So what I like to think about is looking at gifted program as not an extra, but it is an appropriate educational intervention that those students need in order to meet their educational goals. All right, so we have a couple other whys as well. We have our gifted operating standards. Those are set forth by the state of Ohio that lets us know what is expected in a school district when we're offering gifted services. It is a comprehensive document that outlines testing procedures, what service is going to look like in each classroom. It also gives increased protection to our English learners and our students with disabilities for when we're assessing those. And I provided a link down here below if you want to review those. Those are updated. They've been updated about 3 times in the last 20 years, and the most current version we're working off of was in 2017. All right, our report card is our other why for the district. The gifted indicator in our report card is comprised of 3 components. The first one is our performance index, and that is calculated based on students taking a test in the area that they're identified in. Out of a possible 120 points, with 117 meeting the indicator, we were at a 113, and this is based on the 2019-2020 school year. The second component is gifted inputs, and that's assigned based on the percentage of students in our district who are identified as gifted and the percentage of those students that we then serve. 100 is the total amount of points, with 80 meeting that input, and we were at a 61. And then our final part of that gifted indicator is our academic growth rates of our students. Due to testing being canceled in the 2019-2020 school year, we don't have a current gifted value added for that indicator. And then there's a link to our report card down at the bottom. Okay, so when we look at all of this information that's out there and how we want to make sure that all of the stakeholders in our community are aware of that, we took our board approved policy that we've linked here, and we created a gifted plan for Sylvania. It is a large document that lists pretty much anything and everything you'll ever want to know about gifted in Sylvania. It lists our assessments, what those identification scores are. It lists what service and enrichment looks like at each level, protocols for students transferring in, whether they're already gifted or they're not. Basically just a whole wealth of information for parents, for teachers, for students. And all of that information is available on our teaching and learning page on our Sylvania website. All right, so now that we've looked at the why, we need to look at what that actually looks like in our district. So I've separated this out into 2 slides, going back from 2010 to 2017 when those operating standards, or the new ones, were revised and put into place. And you'll notice a lot of the consistency you'll see is with high school. So we started off, and prior to 2010, with our honors, our AP, and our post-secondary options, which became our CCP courses, and those have continued from there on. In our junior high, we had 2 options for our students who are gifted. We had a GATE reading class in grade 6 and GATE English in 7 and 8, and those are only for students who are identified with that ELA ID. If we had a student who was identified in math, the option was there, the opportunity was there for them to take an acceleration option. The big change you're going to see, or the fluctuation, is with our elementary students. So we began with enrichment in grades 4 and 5, and as you'll see as we progress through the years, that's changed, it's waxed, it's waned, but we've been able to keep up some level of enrichment going forward. We were able to increase that enrichment in 5th grade to twice a week, 2 30-minute blocks a week, and then we began to cluster group. And that cluster grouping was based on those operating standards that came out, and we did that in 5th grade math only. In 2015, with the anticipation of those operating standards being revised, we began tracking professional development for our teachers, mainly at the high school level, as that was the area that we could start then counting those students for service. And then going forward is where you're going to see a lot of the changes as our program has grown. We were able to pilot a push-in or a co-teaching model at Highland back in 2018 for 5th grade ELA because those students were not being served yet. We then, in 2019, were able to add a gifted intervention specialist, which allowed us to cluster group in ELA. So both of those identified groups of students could get that enrichment and that differentiation that they needed. We were able to create a co-teaching model in 3 of our elementary schools in our 5th grade ELA classrooms, and able to provide enrichment to our 3rd grade students who up until this point were identified but were not served in any of their areas. Last year, with the beginning of the year, starting out remote and then hybrid, we had more opportunities to see our students as they were learning from home. So at the elementary level, in addition to their enrichment time, they also receive STEM and social emotional courses every week from the gifted intervention specialists. At the junior high level is where we had the biggest change. We switched those GATE English and GATE reading courses over to an honors program. That was a huge change because we had students who were gifted in science and social studies who weren't getting completely that education that they needed. We had students who were not gifted but were at or near that identification level, who were in general education courses, who needed an extension to their curriculum. Switching to the honors courses enabled us to provide that, which we now have in ELA, math, science, and social studies. At the beginning of this year, we added 2 additional gifted intervention specialists at the elementary level, which allowed us to bring that service model from 5th grade down to 4th grade through cluster grouping in ELA and math. It allowed us to increase our enrichment time with our 3rd grade students, so now we're seeing them double the time we have been in the past. And it increased the coordinator position to full-time, which allows me to be a better support system for the teachers, the gifted intervention specialist, and the students in the building. And then going forward, our plan is to continue to broaden our program to additional grade and subject levels so we can meet more of those students' needs that we're not at quite yet. All right. The next 2 slides just provide some key concepts or some definition to those enrichment cluster grouping. And then the next slide has more of those service models, just more of an explanation of what those look like at each level. These are mainly the junior high and high school levels. So it's growing. We need to do this for our students. And I'm excited for that opportunity with the support that we have from our teachers and our administrators and our board. I know we're going to continue to be able to grow and meet more of the students' needs.
Barbie, a quick question, and I know I ask you this often. I want to make sure I have it correct. The state also, in order for us to get certain credit for serving children, they have to have so many hours per week, correct?
Yes.
And a certain model that the state determines
Yes.
per the area of identification, correct?
Yes, so it equates to about 1 class period a day or
Okay.
1 full day per week.
Okay.
Yep, so we have our classroom teachers who are obtaining and maintaining that professional development that we started tracking in 2015 that enables us to count those students as served under the guidance of a gifted intervention specialist.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I want to say thank you for the work you've done, and thank you to our gifted intervention specialist team. I know it's been challenging, especially last year under COVID, but I heard great things in some aspects where you figured it out to provide services for our students. I think it's important that regardless to what end of the continuum our children may be, every child deserves to be challenged at the appropriate level of difficulty in their classroom every day. And there's a couple of statements that stand out, like a gifted child isn't gifted just when they go to the gifted classroom. They're gifted all day long in every area they go, and they should not have to suffer silently. The other piece is a lot of the change that we're seeing from the Ohio Department of Education came out of gifted advocacy groups, because historically gifted was the first thing to go when there was a levy on the ballot. It just went away. It was something that was unfunded, it was optional. And now they've made it such that districts are required to provide services. They came out with the expectations and the standards of what we need to do. So Barbie's been working hard with her team to not only shore up with the intervention specialists, but with our teachers and our administrators to explain what this can look like for our students and what it should look like. So we're rebuilding, but we thought it was important that our folks know around the table that what our vision is for our gifted services program.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Is the gifted designation only determined by test score?
Well, there's the 3 components. It's yes and no. It's the growth that's measured on those test scores. It is the other part that is not. That is the amount of students that we identified. We identified them based on test scores, but it's the amount that we have then served them. So that is the piece that we can control, which is why we've been bringing our service models down from 5th grade to 4th grade, and then potentially further in the future.
I was just curious if there was a way to, if a teacher or an educator notices a child that blows them away but doesn't test well. I just wondered if that was something that ever registered or would get a child a designated gifted status?
So right now, the only way to actually identify them as gifted through the state of Ohio is through one of the approved assessments that the state of Ohio puts out every year. That's not to say that that student might not need some extra enrichment or intervention that could be looked at down the road, or providing some resources to the teacher in the classroom. But to actually have that identification, it has to be through the assessments.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sit around, Joe. Okay. And with that, this is the first opportunity for public participation for items which are on the agenda. And seeing none, thank you, Amy. We are with you, Ms. Shanks.
I have just a brief presentation of the 5-year forecast. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I can push
Oh,
button.
go ahead.
Well,
You can sit here. I'll stand back here. So, November 5-year forecast, it looks really good, but I realized that when I put this presentation together, and a lot of it comes from the presentation from last time, but then I tweak it and I add, the software is constantly coming out with new and interesting graphics. But I realized that when I started looking at the numbers, all of these memories and the collective work, it brings out a story, and all of that information comes back to me when I'm putting the forecast together. So we'll start out with our cash balance at the beginning of fiscal year 22. It's $26 million. We have a forecasted revenues of $96 million this year, and forecasted expenses of 91, and so we are expected to finish with a cash balance in 22 of almost $30 million. So when I look at revenue trends and I just go off the numbers, I look for anomalies and point out and highlight. So what I've done here is I've highlighted the anomalies in our revenue trends in the forecast. I mean, obviously the general property tax is an anomaly compared to last year. The state aid is an anomaly. The restricted grants and aid, and then all other operating revenues. Now the restricted grants and aid, that's not a huge funding source or revenue source for the district, but it's noteworthy. So I wanted to point that out. Now the rest of I think I only didn't point out two, but I mean everybody knows that the pup, that's my favorite. And I have to give credit to our little pup tax. And in 2026 we have $4.7 million. So when I look at the forecast and I look at the graphics, I want to be able to determine, does that look reasonable? And it does look reasonable. If we go back in 2021 and we look at our biggest revenue source, and that was the real estate tax, and we're at a loss, that makes sense to us because we had that big refund for that commercial property. So that looks reasonable. It also looks reasonable in 2022 that we're going to see an increase in real estate property tax because the estimates are at 19% for the revaluation. So although we don't receive increases or additional revenue on levies, we do receive it on our inside millage, and we also receive it on new construction. We know that the district is experiencing some new construction. So that all looks reasonable. It also looks reasonable that we have a huge loss, $3.3 million in state aid because we're now direct funded. So we're no longer being funded for students that are attending other districts, or students that are attending our district from other districts. We're educating them. So that also makes sense. So there's one, I can't tell what this color is.
I'm impressed that you can read that.
Other. Yeah, I know the graphic, the numbers don't
And I'm
always
this close
show
and I
up
can't.
well. And then the other piece, we know that we lost we had $1 billion dividend for workers' comp, our share, and we're not going to receive that. It was a one-time payment last year. It was about $900,000. So all of that looks very reasonable to me. It's in line with what we know, with what I know, with what we've been experiencing in the past, and then moving forward. So our expenditure trends, we have 3 sources of expenditures that look have increased since last year. We know that our salaries increased. We know that we've added staff. We know that they're expected to increase out, through 2026. Is it reasonable? Well, it's reasonable based on a base increase. It's reasonable based on step increases. It's reasonable based on our historical staffing trends. It's reasonable. And then we go to, although I didn't highlight it, the retirement insurance benefits. We're seeing a slight increase only because we have, with the staff increase, we have to pay the retirement benefits. We know that we got a really good bid for our health insurance, and that's going to offset what we would see in the increases as a result of the staffing increases and the retirement benefits. Purchase services also looks very reasonable, and is what we would expect now that we're direct funded for state funding. So we're no longer paying for those students attending elsewhere. We're not paying for the charter school students. We are just being funded for the students in our district. And then the capital outlay is a huge increase. And why is that? We know that we have a finite permanent improvement levy and funds that have dwindled. So we need to pay for some of our capital improvements out of general fund money. This year we hope to do some roofing projects and possibly some paving projects. Maybe 2 snow plows.
Yeah.
That we just made the deal on.
Yay.
So because salaries and benefits are so big, they have their own graph. And right now we're expending about 84.3% of our budget in salaries and benefits. And last year we saw a decrease in classified salaries, and some are from subcosts. And then this year we're seeing an increase based on base increases, longevity, experience levels, things like that. The non-personnel expenditures, we are expected to see a loss in purchase services, as I've noted, and then some of the other ones. Now, the biggest one I want to point out, in 2022 we see a huge expenditure that's $15 million. It's not really an expenditure, it's just our budget reserve. And our budget reserve that we passed in of 60 days cash balance back in, I think, May or June, and it aligns with Board Policy 6022. So what that does is that cash balance gets pulled off the table and is set in a reserve for the district, so we're able to maintain our cash as long as possible. So that's going to be, for the first time, we're going to have $15 million in a 60-day cash balance across the board through 2026 in a budget reservation on the forecast. So year over year, that's right, I must have had it out of sequence. So this is the benefits by type. We know that our health insurance will go down, but in 2024 we have a not to exceed 8% in that 3rd year of our insurance contract. And then we have retirement benefits that will increase in correlation to our salary increases. So this is what our surplus looks like, our annual surplus cash over, revenues over expenditures. We can see that through 2024, we're expected to have revenues exceed expenditures. And the beginning in 2025, we start to drop off, where our expenditures outpace our revenues, and that will take place in 25 and 26. Now that's a long time to make adjustments, so we don't have that. And we also have a really good cash balance in addition to the cash reserve. So at the end of 2026, we are still not out of cash. We have a $12 million cash balance at the end of 2026. Now, a lot can happen in 5 years. But based on the information that we have now, the trends that we're seeing, the continuation of the state aid being funded like it is or very similarly, we should be in good financial shape.
Wow. That was all good news.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions for Lisa?
Lisa, if the Fair Funding Act isn't renewed, what would that do?
thoughts?
Well, it depends on what it means. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of parts to that. Some of the fair funding has been put into permanent law. Now other pieces have not. It's just going to depend on where the economy is at. I mean, we're seeing inflation at this point in our economy. That's definitely going to have an impact on state receipts, which will impact, or it has in the past impacted state funding, because the state has to have a balanced budget. So if we continue to see the trend of inflation and our state receipts being reduced or declining, we could definitely see a pullback in the state funding. A lot of the phase-ins probably won't take place, but we've seen this before. In 2009, they put the expenditure, what they call that, I can't even remember, it was like five models ago, but it was based on, it was quite a bit like this, but it was based on, I don't even know what I'm saying. Well, anyways, it was very similar to this, and we saw that they couldn't afford it. So it was in place in 2010 and 2011, and then it was wiped out. So now, the difference between that model and this model is that the components of this model are in permanent law.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank
Okay.
you, Lisa.
So I have a few things to approve, including the forecast, so I would like to ask the board to approve on a consent agenda basis, items 5.1 to 5.4. 5.1, minutes of the special meeting held on October 11th and the regular meeting held on October 25th. All members were present. The treasurer's report, 5.2, the treasurer's report for the month ending October 31st, 2021. 5.3, the availability funds for then and now invoices in excess of $3,000. And 5.4, the 5-year forecast for fiscal years ending 2022 through 2026.
I'll move approval of items 5.1 to 5.4 on a consent agenda basis.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
I lost power over here. Okay, Bruce Lenslitsky,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin,
Yes.
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, we are back with you, Dr. Motley.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.1, an agreement with the YMCA Corporate Wellness Partner Agreement of, well, they're from Greater Toledo, actually. This is an annual agreement that we have with the YMCA.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin,
Yes.
Bruce Lenslitsky,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.2, the Treasurer's Search Services Agreement with K-12 Business Consulting, or Education and K-12 Business Consulting Incorporated.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Well, I've lost it.
So I was giving my computer, but I don't think that helps you.
I don't know, I keep losing connection. Okay, Julie motion and Greg seconded?
Yes.
Okay. Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette,
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin,
Yes.
Bruce Lenslitsky.
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.3, a resolution to participate in the Purple Heart program. This is a program that is also sponsored by the Ohio Department of Education. It's a Purple Star school program to support military families in our area, to keep us connected and to support the children of these military families, and I recommend approval.
I'll move approval.
I'll
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I just,
What is it?
Yeah,
That's
the-
my
the resolution's really big.
It's great.
Okay. The Ohio Department of Education came out with a platform, I want to say a couple of years back, but actually I'm really pleased that Carla Spangler brought this to our attention. And I know, Tim, you know a little bit about it as well. Would you share?
No, it's just, we recognize and support all of our students, but it's just it's a process where we're applying to the Ohio Department of Education to become a Purple Star, Purple Heart School district, where there's so many processes that we have to go through showing the support we're offering. Part of that is a board resolution saying we are going to make it clear that we're offering support to our military families. It's actually just a designation that many of our districts in the area have, and across the state have, that we thought it'd be important that we declare that designation as well for our military families.
So in terms of the support, what is that going to
Yeah,
entail?
we have a liaison, which will be our student services director, Bob Verhelst, and then between Bob and Carla and I, we've already started working with, I can't think of the name of the one we met with a couple weeks ago, but it's a lot like the HOODS program, I think, like out in Swanton area. It's another, they're just resources that we can offer to our families so that they know they're out there. It'll be on our website. It'll just be a more formalized way to do it. It was really interesting meeting with the individual who was actually a veteran herself. Talked about just when you go from the military world to civilian world, and just some of those pointers she talked about. Like I think 65% of individuals kind of quit their civilian job within 3 years just because it's not as structured, and there are those gray areas of things compared to the black and white pieces, and I think we've experienced that here. But just in different entities that we can offer to our families who need it when a loved one, a parent or guardian is deployed, or even when they come back, how to help that transition home. So that was just one resource, but we're going to continue to reach out to others as well. So it's really good.
Great. Anybody else? Thank you. Ms. Hicks?
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Bruce Lansowski.
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Kimberly Conlon.
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.4, the approval of the interim executive director of human capital. More specifically, we've asked Jane Spurgeon to join us to serve in this capacity with the Department of Human Resources. She already has started working with our staff here in the district, and it's a welcomed support. And this contract currently is through December 31st, where we mutually agreed to revisit how it's working at that point in time and if it will be extended.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Hicks?
Julie.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Tammy.
Yes.
Kimberly.
Yes.
Bruce Lynch.
Yes.
I'm just gonna do it by hand.
Okay.
I'm gonna do it old school.
I could do it. Everybody in favor say aye. If it makes it easier for you.
I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Alrighty. I recommend item 6.5, the resignation of Michelle McVicker, Secretary to the Treasurer, effective November 29th. This is an exempt resignation.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Lisa?
Laura Giant. Tammy
Alright.
Lavalette.
Yes.
Bruce Lansowski.
Yes.
Kimberly Conlon.
Yes.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Alrighty. I recommend item 6.6 for approval. This is an administrative resignation of Mr. Joey Beck, Director of Transportation, and yes, that is his legal name.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Hicks?
Bruce Lansowski.
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Kimberly Conlon.
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.7. It is a revision of a policy regarding compensation. I recommend it for board approval.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Hicks?
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Greg Feller.
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette.
Yes.
Kimberly Conlon.
Yes.
Bruce Lansowski.
Yes.
Thank you. I will recommend items 7.1 through 7.7 on a consent agenda item basis. Item 7.1 seeks approval for quite a few substitute teachers for this school year. Yay! We're pleased to have these young ladies and gentlemen join our team. Item 7.2, however, we have 2 license resignations. So we still are ahead of the curve though, so it's okay. But we wish these 2 individuals well as they have chosen to resign. Item 7.3, we have a recommendation for several areas for extra duty pay, which include hours for home instruction, training for gifted PD on our our collaboration day. Also, the Northview staff attending the Ohio Schools Improvement Institute, which was funded through the High Schools at Work grant. We also have hours for our Northview Fall Ohio State Testing Intervention. We also have a number of individuals who will receive a stipend for participating in some weekend professional development on November 6th and 7th. In addition to also additional PD for our SALA teachers and during training for our SALA parents. And we also have some ESL support for our teachers to be funded through ESSR. We also have some science collaboration work taking place at Northview to support our at-risk students. Also, we have a couple of student stipends there, and also support for our special ed homebound instruction for our homebound students. And finally, we have a Northview ACT accommodation request. And those are item 7.3. I also recommend item 7.4, which looks at athletic volunteers that are seeking approval for this school year. Item 7.5, we seek approval for licensed substitute resignations. Item 7.6, we have 1 supplemental resignation. Item 7.7, we have several individuals listed there who are being offered supplemental contracts to support some sports and extracurricular activities at our schools across the district. And again, item 7.8 is a consent agenda request.
I'll move for approval on a consent agenda basis, items 7.1 to 7.7.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions?
Just a quick piece on 7.3. Both Northview and Southview have submitted intervention plans that were preliminary approved at the district level. Northview's just moved ahead with the personnel that you'll see. So South, I don't want you to think that it's just Northview getting this funding for intervention and things like that. Southview will be coming shortly, so I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Ms. Shanks?
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Tammy Lavalette,
Yes.
Julie Hoffman.
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin.
Yes.
Bruce Wanslewski.
Yes.
Alrighty. Moving on to human resources classified. These items will be recommended on a consent agenda basis for items 8.1 through 8.11. 8.1 refers to a correction from the October 11th board meeting agenda. There was a correction there noted. Item 8.2 is a parent volunteer for our school district. Item 8.3 looks to approve new hires for our district and a number of capacities as noted. Item 8.4, we have a couple of classified resignations, I believe 5 if my glasses are seeing that clearly. Item 8.5, we have 2 individuals who will be retiring, one in just a couple of weeks, the other a couple of days thereafter. Judy Wheeler has 28 years of service with our district, and then Luann Haley, and we wish these 2 ladies well in their retirement. Item 8.6, we have a couple of corrections. One is a correction in name and also correction in high school. Also, item 8.7, we recommend approval for these individuals who will take place and did take advantage of some training that we are providing for conscious discipline for our preschool. Also, item 8.8, we recommend approval for a stipend for these individuals who participated in a professional learning session on November 6th and 7th. It should be noticed that that would be compensated through ESSER funds. We have also item 8.9, which is a classified unpaid leave. Item 8.10, we have a number of classified personnel actions. You typically see these each month as individuals are moving from one position in the district to another position in the district. Item 8.11 are supplemental positions of our classified folks here in the district. And of course, item 8.12 is the recommendation for a consent agenda approval.
I'll move approval of items 8.1 to 8.11 on a consent agenda basis.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Shanks?
Bruce Lanslowski,
Yes.
Greg Feller,
Yes.
Julie Hoffman,
Yes.
Tammy Lafayette,
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Thank you. Okay, board committee reports and announcement. Kim, anything?
No.
Nothing.
Greg? Ruslan?
No.
Tammy?
I'll defer to you on Sylvania Prevention Alliance. Beyond that, no.
Okay, so Sylvania Prevention Alliance does have big news. New director. Connie White will be the new director since Maria is moving on to other things. And they have the hot cocoa run. You guys probably know what date it is. February?
It's always in February.
So they're signing up for the hot cocoa run for all of you people that like to run. Which would not fun.
I'll pass out hot cocoa.
We need volunteers to pass out hot cocoa, so I think that's all I have. Anybody have anything else? Okay, this is the second opportunity for public participation for items not on the agenda. Seeing none, I move we go into executive session for some purposes.
Yes, I only know one. Matters required to be confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes. Is there another?
Is that it?
We do have one personnel item,
Okay.
So employment.
but that's it.
Yeah, okay, that's it. So moved.
Second.
Ms. Shanks?
Julie Hoffman?
Yes.
Greg Feller?
Yes.
Bruce Lanslowski?
Yes.
Kimberly Conklin?
Yes.
Tammy Lafayette?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we will not be taking action following executive session.